Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge. It's loungy time. I'm Loungy McLoungeface, and it is 26th February 2026. Hope everybody's doing well. Um, we are, yeah, we're looking pretty good here. Um, yeah, I hope everybody's doing real well. We're going to kind of jump right into questions tonight, I think. We had one of the many British expressions that I just like very much. It was a near run thing. I was taking a nap on the couch, as I am wont to do prior to the show. And I'd set my alarm, of course, and I was just lying there, and I just opened my eyes and just thought, I wonder what time it is. And it was 6:01. I had not turned my alarm on. You see, I think that was it. In any event, it was pretty close, but here we are. It's one of those things where your internal clock is just kind of saying, keeping track of those milliseconds. But we're here, and we're not queer. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and we are ready to rumble. So, Dave Big Boutte says same thing happened with Dick Rutan over Africa. Only the consequences for Dick Rutan were not nearly as severe as they were for me. For those of you who didn't hear the story, if you're new here, yeah, it's funny you mentioned that actually, Dave Big Boutte, because I was thinking about that earlier today, and I hadn't in quite a while. If you haven't seen it, why just talk about things when I can put up linkaroonies? Um, do it this way here. Hang on a second. I'd gotten to know Dick Rutan much later than Burt Rutan, but he was an amazing guy, and he died a couple. Oh my gosh, is it 2 years now? I guess it is in May, or let me find out. Um, but even though I hadn't spent an awful lot of time with him, the fact that I knew him at all was just an amazing experience for me, and so I was able and privileged, very privileged, to do a memorial for him, which is at 94,000 views now. I'm just going to put it out there because someone else mentioned it, and like I said earlier, I'd heard of it. I was thinking about it today. It is here, and hang on, Twitch, and also. Here. Hi, Eric Techie. Hi, everybody. Dave Big Boutte says the last 3 seconds of your tribute video make me jump up and punch the air. Mission accomplished. There are times when I know I'm on my game because I make myself cry. That's actually a tremendously um, uh, inaccurate uh, statement. I don't do it. I just put together. Um, I can just put together pieces in a way where the subject matter makes me cry, and that was one of them. Uh, he was such an amazing man, and there was a piece of music that I just genuinely love. This will mean something to some of you out there. It was the opening theme music for Jane's USAF game back in the day, and it's called March to Glory. It's absolutely fantastic, and the second that uh, I mean, we were all at the hospital, and I got a chance to spend an hour with him, along with Bert and I think it was two other people, two or three at the most, and we were all there around the hospital bed, and I was doing my best to keep him laughing, and then we went downstairs and sat in the hospital lobby. His wife spent his final hour with him, And and the second we got the news, I just thought, all right, I'm going to do a memorial. And the only thing I knew about the memorial at that instant was I'm going to do a memorial, and I'm going to use March to Glory because it was written for him. It's an amazing life. But the thing was mentioned that got me thinking about it was when Dick was flying Voyager around the world. He flew that aircraft for 11 days. He was there with Gina Yeager, who deserves a lot of credit for the heroism involved. Gina was a big part of making that entire project happen, big part of it. She had a lot to do with keeping the financing going, and on and on and on. And I don't want to take anything away from her, but it was billed as that she was the co-pilot, and I don't think she spent more than 20, 30 minutes at the most at the controls of that. So Dick flew Voyager around the world 11 days with a 20-minute cat nap here and there. So just to give you a little taste of the stories, if you haven't seen either one of them, but Dick was, they were, so Voyager, Dave Big Boutte says the Velvet Arm. I was thinking about the Velvet Arm in the shower this morning. I don't know why, but I was. Voyager was a flying fuel tank, and as they started doing the flight testing, it was unstable in the beginning, but once they put more and more fuel in it, it became more and more unstable, and they had never done a fully fueled test prior to the around the world attempt. And the plane wouldn't get off the ground. There was so much fuel in it. They didn't know that the wings would bend forward, and so finally, when it looked like they were just going to go into a fireball at the end of the world's longest runway, that takeoff roll took, I think it was almost 2 minutes. Think about that. Almost 2 minutes to get the wheels off the ground. In a commercial jet happens within 30 seconds generally. And he had to just basically massage the elevator, and he literally got the wings flapping because the plane was dragging its wingtips on the ground, and he literally got the wings to flap, which fixed the angle of attack issue, and then the wings, it was designed to flex enormously. The wings bent up almost like a U. It was incredible how flexible that aircraft was. So anyway, got it off the ground, and for the first 2 days, 3 days, any kind of a bump of turbulence, and the plane's not flying in the stratosphere, it's down where the weather is. This thing would start this runaway oscillation, which is going to snap the wings out if you didn't counter dampen it and immediately. And that's really difficult because it's so counterintuitive. When you feel the plane, when you feel it going down, you got to push down because it's already started the other side of the cycle. So anyway, the Velvet Arm was the only thing that could have saved that airplane, and did. So by the time they got to Africa, they were back light enough again so that the plane, if the air was smooth, the plane would basically hold heading and everything on the autopilot. So so they were over Africa at nighttime, I think it was, and they were approaching a waypoint. I honestly don't remember what the name of the waypoint was. It wasn't Yankee, but let's just say it was because I need a waypoint. So they're about an hour short of Yankee, and by now the plane's stable enough for the autopilot. So Dick says to Jenna, all right, don't touch anything, which is usually a pretty, sound advice, actually. If you ever find yourself in an airplane and the airplane's still flying, don't touch anything is generally pretty good good advice rather. So so he says to Jenna, wake me 20 minutes before we get to Yankee. They had GPS navigation, I think, at the time. Just come out. And she says, okay. So Dick crawls out of this. The thing is, honest to God, the size of a phone book. It's at the Smithsonian, and so unfortunately Jenna was very small. So Dick gets out of the pilot seat. He doesn't even have a cockpit. There's a blister. It's not even a canopy. There's a little blister at the top of the thing, and if you put your head all the way up, you can see like this much. So Jenna gets in there. The autopilot is set. Dick crawls to the back. He just crawls out of the seat. She crawls in. He stretches out and is asleep before his head is horizontal. He has no memory at all of sleeping. He just remembers waking up, just like I did, just instantly went to sleep, instantly woke up and said, "Where are we?" And she says, "We're doing fine." She says, "What's our position? How much more time till we get to Yankee?" And she said, "Oh, Yankee, no, we passed that an hour ago. I just thought I'd let you sleep a little longer." So he looks up at the radar, and there's nothing but a wall of red ahead of the airplane. It's a mountain in Africa. And he starts screaming at her, "Turn, turn, turn, turn." And she said, "What? Turn, turn, left." He doesn't have time to get back into the cockpit, so she turns the heading indicator on the autopilot, which is a pretty gentle turn. And so they flew on. So they took a look at the ground track afterwards, and they generally, no, Jenna was not a big fan of learning the aircraft systems. She thought that was a little tedious, and that had Dick greatly concerned. And so they took a look at the ground track afterward, and came to the conclusion that if Dick had slept for another 60 seconds, they would have hit that mountain, that it would have been unrecoverable, which means that they would have both been flying along, and then they wouldn't have been flying along. There were no lights on the airplane. It wasn't like you had these big beams out there so you could see the ground coming. Wouldn't have made any difference anyway. The thing turned so slowly. But yeah, they said another 60 seconds of sleep, and that would have been it. And that's not an accident. Let's not forget, by the way, this man hadn't slept in probably 7 days by this point. And so it wasn't like he was lightly napping. It was one of those things that you see from soldiers in combat or firefighters, like at 9/11. They just get horizontal and they're out for 30 hours. But something in Dick's brain was keeping track of that. And boom. So it's actually pretty amazing. And yeah, so the plane was so everything about that flight. I'm just recapping what it's in the memorial, which is really quite good, if I do say so myself. But in the memorial, they talk. This may be my favorite aviation exchange of all time. As they're adding fuel, the plane becomes heavier and heavier, and in order to make this flight, Bert did the fuel calculations, and you have to give yourself a little bit of reserve, but in order to make the flight, drag had to be reduced to absolute minimum. Thank you, Roadrunner. That's very kind. It really is. Absolute minimum. So the control surfaces were as small as they could be because they all had drag. And Dick came down after one of these test flights, and he had, the thing was just such a pig in terms of its ability to turn. So he comes down, he lands the airplane, just jumps out of there. He's just mad as a hornet. He's just furious because of the crummy performance of the airplane. And he runs over to Bert and says, "Bert, this plane is damn near uncontrollable." And Bert says, "Well, Dick, you knew that when we designed the airplane." And he says, "God damn it, Bert, this aircraft will not turn." And Bert says, "Dick, this is an around the world flight. It doesn't have to turn at all." And I just thought that was maybe the greatest thing I have ever heard in my life. absolutely tremendous. It was great on the Dickerson Memorial to be talking about his Vietnam time because honestly, that's even more heroic. Um, Now we'll get to the questions, Andrew. I know he's kidding. Once I start talking airplanes, it's pretty much it. Um, yeah, any landing you can walk away from is a good landing, and if you can use the airplane again, then it's a great landing. So anyway, um, he was just he's the living definition of a steely-eyed missile man. His call sign was Killer, and and despite the astonishing heroism in the Voyager flight, what he did with the Misties in Vietnam as a Misty pilot, and they're all numbered. There's I think just under 200 of them, and and what he did in Vietnam was amazing. Got shot down over Vietnam. Um, he said that when so if you leave from California and you head west, you basically cross half the planet, which is the Pacific Ocean. It's really almost halfway by the time you get to um, the east coast of Asia. And as it turned out, overflying the east coast of Asia in 1986, uh, the route of the flight took him directly over Vietnam, and he says he was seriously concerned that he gets shot down again over Vietnam, but that didn't happen. I don't know if this is. I don't remember if this may not have been in the. I might have had to cut this for time, but somewhere around must have been like it's past the halfway point or whatever. He'd been flying for 7 or 8 days straight, and it was clear day, and he was at, I don't know I really should know what the actual altitude they cruised at. I want to say it was probably something like 15,000, 18,000, something like that. And he's flying along, and he's so tired he can't see. You know, his body's dying basically. You know, he's low oxygen. They had supplemental oxygen as well, but he's just exhausted and completely stressed, and it's just this endurance test, and it is loud. And you get this two engines on this thing. The front engine was only used to climb, but and they shut it down for the rest of the flight. That's another act of genius on Bert's part. Who is enough of a genius to say, we don't have enough engine power for this aircraft to climb. If we put a big enough engine on it for it to climb, then we cannot get around the world unrefueled because an engine that big will drink too much fuel. It's an impossible problem. If you're going to carry enough fuel to make the around the world trip, the plane is too heavy to climb. And if you put a big enough engine on it for it to get to altitude, then it drinks fuel too fast. So Bert put two engines on it, and it wasn't the weight of the engine that was the problem. It was the fuel consumption and the power. So he put two engines on it, one in the front, one in the back, and by the time it gets to altitude, it shuts down the first engine, and it doesn't use that engine again for the rest of the flight. He's carrying 400 or 500 pounds of ballast, basically. You know, that's Bert's genius. Anyway, Dick was over this someplace beautiful. I remember it may have been like the Seychelles or something. It was someplace tropical and beautiful. And Roadrunner says it's surprised they didn't jettison the climb engine to save weight and drag. The weight and balance is very precarious in general, and when everything is that far forward of the CG, you jettison that, and the plane's completely out of balance. Anyway, he's flying over this island, like it was almost like the Bahamas from the air. It was just turquoise, and there was this runway down there. It was dark, long runway, and brand new looking. And he saw these beaches and these islands, you know, and he was flying over this and looking down at it, and he told me about this. He said, I was looking at this island, you know, and I thought, we've already gone 2/3 of the way or something. No one would blame us if we just landed, you know? No one would blame us if we just landed. And he just started telling himself all the reasons that it would be perfectly fine for him just to go down there and land. It's not like they were home free. They still had a long way to go. There've been a lot of close calls, and he just looked down at this island and kept thinking, just dude, just end the suffering. Just land the airplane. Just land the airplane. You don't owe the people money or anything. Just land. And he said, flying past that landing field was the hardest part of the flight for him. And I think, good God, man, we've all been tired. I've never been awake for 7 days flying an airplane tired, but he has. And the temptation, just to end it, just land and you get to sleep and stuff. That kind of willpower is what did it. One last quick little story, which I think did make it. He was telling me about this. He had a Long Easy, I had a Long Easy, and both of these, they were designed by Bert. And I don't know if he was consciously practicing for the record flight, but he flew. I want to say it was from Alaska to Florida on one tank of gas in the Long Easy. In order to make that flight, you can't run at full power. I had a pretty slick Long Easy, and I never ran mine at less than full power. That Long Easy that I had, I would cruise at 180 knots. That's about 200 miles an hour. But if he's going to go the distance, he would have to slow that down to probably 120, 130 knots, which means he's not much faster than driving from Alaska to Florida, and it took a couple days. So the Long Easy has a canard in front. If you've ever seen the Rutan type airplanes, they've got a little wing in the front instead of the tail. So if you're sitting in a Long Easy, right in front of you, right here, is the canard. It's just right there, which is a really cool feeling when you're flying, because it's almost like a really huge attitude instrument. Anyway, he said it was 2 or 3 in the morning, right at that minimum on the biocycle, and he was just plain exhausted, and he looked up on the canard, and he saw something, and this is a real mystery to me. I think this would actually deserve some serious psychological investigation. He looked up on the canard, and he saw a little man sitting on the canard, and this first began to appear, I want to say, in World War II, because World War I missions just didn't last that long. But starting in World War II, you would have long flights, and what he saw was a gremlin. And what fascinates me about gremlins is that pilots from all over the world, from all different kinds of cultures, saw the same thing. American pilots would see it, British pilots would see it, Germans, Japanese, all of them, Russians. And that's where that, as Dave Big Boutte says, Q Shatner, so did Eric. If you ever saw the classic Twilight Zone episode, was it Terror at 20,000 feet or something? And the guy looks out on the wing and he sees this monster just disassembling the airplane. But gremlins were real to the degree that it was a common hallucination. But all of the pilots who had reported gremlins said this wasn't like a vague kind of a sort of hallucination. They said they're like unbelievably real. So Dick is sitting there. He's sleep deprived for 2 days, and he looks out on this, and it's right in front of you. I mean, almost could touch it if you had the canopy open. You could touch it. And he said, I saw this little man sitting on the wing. He was wearing black pants. He had a black vest. He had a black button-down shirt and a little bow tie. And he was sitting on the wing, and he had like dark skin, but when he smiled, he had like razor sharp, like piranha interlocking teeth that were chrome. And Dick is looking at it, and the gremlin says, "Hi, Dick," and Dick doesn't really respond, and the gremlin says, "Dick, it's time just to let it go. It's time to go to sleep." And Dick is basically saying, piss off. And the gremlin said to him, and this really made my blood run cold. He said, "Dick, no, why are you flying?" He says, "I'm flying because I've got this mission. I'm going to finish the mission." And the gremlin said, "Dick, you're already dead. You fell asleep flying, and you went into the ground. You're already dead. Just wake up. Just it's time to go." And man, if I saw a little guy on my wing that and it said, "You're already dead," I would have probably just dropped right there. We would have lost some ballast anyway, I could tell you that. In any event, he basically told the gremlin to piss off and just kept going. He's just such a stud, that man. Just such a stud, and such a well, it's my favorite compliment, and he is the living embodiment of it. He is the living definition of a steely-eyed missile man. He just did what Neil Armstrong did and others did. He just gutted it out. He just sheer guts. One last thing, and then we'll get to the questions. I know once we get talking about airplanes, I had known for quite a long time that Neil Armstrong, prior to the Apollo missions, was an X-15 pilot, and I might have known that he flew the X-15 higher than anyone else. But what I didn't know was that he was having some kind of control problem. So he got out of the X-15 would get you into space. Those guys were all astronauts before they made the definition of what the Kármán line was. He was the pilot. And Armstrong took the X-15 up, and he had some kind of control issue. So when it came time to re-enter the atmosphere, he was coming down faster than he should have. And it's hard to believe, really, but the atmosphere is actually certainly not uniform in terms of its density. So when he was coming back down, he came down so steeply that he bounced off the atmosphere. Now, what I didn't know was that he had taken off from Edwards Air Force Base, and he was flying away from Edwards Air Force Base at Mach 6 times the speed of sound, something like that. And he bounces off the atmosphere, and he keeps going, and he's having a devil of a time talking about the airplanes. Devil of a time controlling this X-15. What I didn't know was he was moving away from his landing site at 6 times the speed of sound. I don't think the X-15 had any reserve fuel. I'm pretty sure it was a glider. Might have had a little bit of fuel that they could have used as a kicker. So he turns this thing around, and he starts gliding back towards Edwards, and he's like 70 miles away from where he's supposed to be, and he's just gliding. And I've been in a situation where I didn't really have to stretch or glide, not in the real flying I did, but in DCS I've had this happen to me many times. I just, good Lord, I've got to get to absolute maximum fuel efficiency and just pray to God this thing gets there. And he's got to cross the San Gabriel Mountains to get to the Mojave Desert. And he lands this thing, and he just barely cleared the mountains. So he's got like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. No, Roadrunner says, I don't think the glide ratio of an X-15 is very high. There's no wings on it. It looks like a missile. It's got tiny little stubby fins in the back. And he had like 30 minutes to say to himself, I wonder if we're going to save this mission or whether or not it's going to go into the San Gabriel Mountains. And he just cooled down. I'm proud to say I've had that experience where I've been in emergencies and I just felt that. Just be calm, dude. Just be calm. I felt it was like this panic starts gnawing on your toes like a little red-eyed rat, and it's just like you're either gonna push that down and keep it down, or you're gonna die. So it's quite an experience. Anyway, if you haven't had a chance to see it, it's in the comment stream. I again, I know, don't mean this to sound immodest, but I cannot recommend it highly enough, only because his life was so extraordinary, and he was a friend of mine. So Amazing world. Um, yeah. So, all right. Let's see what we got in the questions here. Ironically enough, um, that stretching the glide to get to the airfield has killed a lot of pilots. And one of them was, I wouldn't call a close friend of mine, but I spent about 3 hours with him at his place because he made canopies. And he lost engine power on takeoff. And instead of just lowering the nose and gliding forward and landing it on the street, he he tried to stretch the glide, stalled the airplane, went straight into the ground with, I think he had two of his kids with him, and one survived. He was killed, and his and another kid was killed. I knew a flight instructor at Santa Monica Airport who was older than the mountains, and one of those guys you would think was just so seasoned and so experienced that he would be, you know, just completely safe. But this is before I owned the Long Easy. I owned half of a plane called a Sky Arrow, and they came out with the light sport version of the Sky Arrow, and I'd let him fly the Sky Arrow with me in the back seat, and then he let me fly his Sky Arrow. And hey, Clay, everything's good. He let me fly his Sky Arrow, which is a nice airplane, but he kept saying, "No, take her lower, take her lower. Now we'll do some turns here." I said, "I'm not comfortable going this low." I think his name was Griff, if I remember. I'm We're not doing this, Griff. This is too low to be doing this. There's no. We're on the ocean side of the Santa Monica mountains, and we've got Pacific Coast Highway, and that's it. And if we lose this engine, so I'm always thinking the engine's going to go exactly at the worst time. And he certainly didn't call me chicken or anything, but he kind of said, "Okay, man, if you're not comfortable, then let's go back up to 1,200." I said, "Yeah, we'll go to 15." And so I didn't think anything of it. And then I don't know, a month later, Sky Arrow is a very rare airplane, and we were the only Sky Arrow flying out of Santa Monica for years. And then I get a call asking me if I'm okay, and I said, "Yeah, why?" I said, somebody crashed a Sky Arrow into the Pacific Ocean." He had a student, and fortunately, I don't remember. I can't remember. I think the student was in the front, but yeah, he stalled it at low altitude, and put the thing into the ocean. The seat belt restraints tore loose on both of their seats. Wouldn't tear loose on ours. He had a light sport version, so instead of a 5-point harness, he had a 3-point harness, and both of them went through the canopy. And some guy was. There's a couple of tiny little office buildings, like 2-story buildings, all along Pacific Coast Highway, and some guy was working his insurance job, and he looked out the window and he saw this plane go in, and he just ran downstairs, just tore off his jacket and his tie and his shoes, and he had his surfboard there, and he just ran his ass to the beach, which is right there, and he just paddled out there and rescued both of them, but the guy who I knew died. I don't know. I think it was 2 weeks later. The student survived. How do you? These kind of things are. I don't want to say. Yeah, I'll just go with the word. They were strangely reassuring to me. I would read every crash report I possibly could, and every time I would read these crash reports, I would say that I wouldn't have done that. I would not have done that. I probably would have done some other things, but like I said, I've had 3 engine failures, and they were all non-events. And I'm looking at these things, and I'm thinking. And when I saw the number of accidents that were preventable from just because of training, I never once saw a case where a competent pilot was flying an airplane safely. I've seen cases where they've had engine failures. I've even seen cases where they ran out of gas, which is what happened to John Denver, also in a Long Easy. But I've never, ever run into an accident where St. Peter would have said, hey, tough break, kid, He would have said, what the hell were you thinking? So anyway, there you go. All right, moving on. So we got tonight's questions are moderated by Roadrunner. Hooray! Thank you, Roadrunner. Appreciate it. And let's see what we got here. Got a Roadrunner, got an Eric Blake, got a Marisha Dark, got a Guy Balo, got a Road Rider, got a Crikey. It's good to see you, Crikey. Another Roadrunner, I think, capital G, Braden Higby, Marisha Dark. And I think that's it. And we'll get them all. All right, here we go. So from Roadrunner, greetings, friend Bill, greeting, friend Roadrunner. To the surprise of almost no rational being, the State Department has determined that Code Pink and other ground roots movements are actually funded by the CCP. Imagine my shock. I'm going to have to just clutch my beads and head over to the fainting couch, which is where I go when I get the vapors. Do you think these disruptions to common sense and decency should be prosecuted, possibly under RICO statutes? Where does the distinction between free speech and active subversion by foreign states diverge? Well, first of all, I 100% think that. Let's get the most amusing images from friend Roadrunner. So this isn't a free speech issue. This is a espionage and subversion issue. This is a psyops issue. I don't see any free speech conflict at all. It's not a case of needing to curtail free speech, and I don't see it as a violation of free speech. I see it as a violation of national sovereignty. I see it as active psychological warfare by a country well known to be antithetical and actively trying to undermine the United States. And more than anything, I see it as treason on the part, not on the part of everybody who's in Code Pink, but it's treason on the part of anybody who knew that the money was coming from China. I think it's just a clear case of treason. If somebody offers you money, a foreign government offers you money to foster or to foment seditious activity, any of that stuff, it's treason, and they should go to jail for that. It's not just Code Pink. When what's her name was shot, Miss Good, the outrage machine sprung into action so quickly that it was clear to me that that the money had been in place, the organization had been in place, and that they were just waiting for their plan to come true. And their plan was to find the most unstable people in the country, which are the far left of the left, provoke them with constant affirmations that it's the end of democracy, he's a Nazi, and all the rest of it, and provoke ICE to the point where sooner or later an ICE agent is going to fear that his life is in danger. And then when that shooting happened, everything was there immediately. It was ready. It's almost like the T-shirts and the signs were printed already, kind of thing. And so, I want to follow the money. Eric Blake says, never mind that we're not a democracy. I have to tell you guys, of all of the things that are just lying on the ground for free for us to pick up, this is the most obvious one. We have absolutely, and we've been doing this for my entire life, we have got to stop referring to this country as a democracy. We have to stop it, because we're not. Number one, we are in a government structure that is far superior to democracy. In a democracy, you can vote yourself into slavery. Democracy, you can vote yourself into genocides. In a republic, your personal protections are guaranteed by the Constitution, or I should say rather, the ability of the government to infringe on your natural born freedoms is specifically limited by the republic. And we should never, ever, ever talk about our country as a democracy again. We should be talking about our republic. And parenthetically, and most obviously, if we say we're a democracy, which political party sounds more like it's at home in America? The Democratic Party or the Republican Party? Conversely, if we're a republic, every time they come out with that this is a threat to our democracy, the response to this is a threat to our democracy should not be, no, it's not. The response to that should be, it is a threat to a democracy. It's not a threat to a republic. That's why we're a republic. That's why. You cannot threaten a republic. You can only threaten a democracy. And just, just do it. That's what I would do. What's recreate this line here? Something we should be saying something along the lines of republic. A republic is our business. That's why we built her. Just own it, man, and own it, own it, own it, own it, own it. If you were to change the national dialogue from democracy to republic, then I honestly think 80% of our problems would go away. And no one ever calls them out on it. And no one ever calls them out on it in the way that I just did. This is a threat. Donald Trump poses a threat to our democracy. My response would be, I suppose it's theoretically possible that Donald Trump could pose a threat to a democracy, but since we're not a democracy, he doesn't pose a threat to us because you cannot destroy the structure of a republic by playing around with the voting. It's not. Donald Trump's a threat to our democracy. If we were a democracy, you would have a case to make, but since we're not, you don't. He doesn't have the power to change the structure of the government which protects individuals. I'd love to be on it would, anyway. Of all strange, this is going to be a strange reference, but if you, I've mentioned this channel a couple times before. There's this guy out there. He's got a channel called Homath, and he deals almost exclusively with male-female relationships. But one of the things he does is he talks about the psychology of an over-feminized society where the females look upon the government as their provider and protector, and he talks about how the plan has been to how am I trying to put this? He talks about the emotional drivers of people who believe in being married to the government. And there was some point I was going to make. I've just forgotten what it was. It was, but it's tied into the female psychology. It's tied into things like suicidal empathy. It's tied into means of control. He ties it into things. He talks about like the female strategy that's involved with having all females agreeing that all of them are tens, that kind of thing. Marisha says his levels of consciousness things are great. Yeah, he talks about, I really cannot recommend it highly enough. He's really, really, really shrewd, very, very clever guy. And once you understand how these psychologies work, you realize what the purpose of the left has been, and that has been to feminize, to turn women into the ultimate victims, convince them that they're the ultimate victims, make them vote for the left-wing policies that make them feel good even while they do harm. And this is extremely effective. If we don't enforce the idea of a republic, these awfuls are going to vote us right into um, an authoritarian state. It's one of the things it's one of the more depressing things about the colonies, but that's why I'm doing it. Uh, when you hear the propaganda for America voting away its sovereignty to become part of the North American Central Administrative District, they list all of the good things that are going to happen for you. There's no guns, there's no threats, there's no secret police, there's nothing. There's just appealing to people's sense of envy and their sense of and their willingness to take comfort over freedom, and their willingness to sacrifice their own destiny for comfort. So things like the universal basic income and all the rest of it. And when I do those commercials, I'm going to do those commercials in such a way that it's going to make you think it's a really good idea that we give up this sovereignty. I'm going to make it so compelling that we give up all of these things that make us free people, because most people would rather be comfortable than happy. Not even more comfortable than free, that's clear. They'd rather be comfortable than happy. That's a big human weakness. Great example is what I mentioned earlier. Dick Rutan had a chance to be comfortable by landing that airplane, and he declined the comfort. So how do you vote yourself out of your comfort zone? That requires discipline, and it requires long-term thinking. It requires the ability to say, well, we'll just take the universal basic income, okay? Let's just say, and I think this is not only realistic, but likely future. Certainly Elon talks about this, where productivity goes so high, and the actual cost of manufacturing and so on comes so low, that let's say we were able to afford a universal basic income without putting us even further into debt, which is a whole other story. But let's just say, for the sake of the argument, that you could do it. How many people do you think would accept a universal basic income? I really think it could not be less than 50% of the population. I suspect it's probably closer to 60, 70%. Roadrunner says 25%. I wish you were right, but I think given human nature, if you said to most people, if you said to everybody, you can stop working today, and you would be able to have a nice apartment, or even like an expensive house. You know what? I don't even have to invent this, because this is what the World Economic Forum is trying to achieve. No one will own anything, and everyone will be happy. That is a very, very achievable goal for them, where everybody gets a nice living. You don't own your TV. You don't own your house. You get, and for this to work, mind you, it's important you understand this. For this to work, it can't be a crummy existence. What they're basically going to tell you is you can live your life pretty much the way you're living it now, beyond your means, and you will be comfortable for the rest of your life. I think 70% of the people would take that. I know 90% of young people would take it. What do we have to do to get this universal basic income? Nothing. You want to sit around and play video games all day? Nothing. You want to quit your job so you can be a painter? Fine. You want to do any of these things? Fine. I bet you 70% would take it, and I bet that number gets higher every year. So, once you're on that, then they own everything, and you own nothing. So, P7 2017 says, how would a universal income work without standardizing housing and food costs? You would basically say to people, I think what you would, let me rephrase that. I think what the end result would be is that virtually everybody would just stay where they are in life, more or less, but they wouldn't have to pay bills. You obviously couldn't sell this if you're living in a one-bedroom apartment or a studio apartment, which I did for many, many years, and now say to them you have a 5-bedroom house. But generally speaking, if you went to people and said, listen, you can continue to live the way you're living now, and we'll pay your rent, we'll pay your water bills, we'll pay your food bills, go down to the supermarket, get what you want, and so on. This is an achievable goal if the economy expands the way that people like Elon say that it's going to, given the power of AI to automate tasks and increase productivity. So, I mean, Elon is saying anybody who works at a computer is essentially going to be obsolete. So let's just say, just for the sake of the argument, if it turns out that you no longer need accountants, secretaries, middle managers, salespeople, all of that, if you say that, think about how much money would be saved by not paying salaries. And that money that would go to pay salaries would largely go into the universal basic income. Now, a number of people said, Roadrunner says, I don't think I would watch an AI Bill Whittle. Well, I've got some bad news for you, Roadrunner, because for the last 9.5 weeks, yes, Donald Bryan says that was Nancy Pelosi's gloat when Obamacare passed. Now you can be a painter, you can be a writer, you can be an artist. Or you could sit on the couch and watch the WKRP in Cincinnati Marathon, which is what most people would do. You really have to have to really grasp like the big picture, the meta picture, you have to grasp what human nature is and what the attractors are to the worst side of human nature. So, before the internet, many of us remember before the internet, and when the internet came along, people said that, just think about it, everybody in the world will have access to the aggregate total information of the human race. Every novel ever written, every manual, all of it. It'll be available to everybody, and especially with high-speed internet and all this other stuff. And so, and the thing of it is, that's true. That's true. Anybody can get a degree in anything. If you want to become a plumber, there's enough organized tutorials and certainly courses and all of this stuff. And so the big point I'm trying to get at here is, since anybody can get can up their station, to use an old Victorian word, since anybody has the tools now to up their station, you could be working in Chipotle and you could come home at night and you could take structured classes online that would teach you a profession or a trade or something like that. Anybody could do it. How many people actually do it? Air Techie's got it right. We use it to gamble, binge videos, and watch porn. That's the human condition. And the discipline, that's the word for dick as well, the discipline to do the difficult thing instead of the easy thing for long-term gain is a very acquired virtue, and we are really running out of it, which is why the colonies is there, because it shows you the greater benefit of hardship. Yes, it's cold and it's wet, and you have to work hard, and you don't get days off, and all of this. But when you see the reaction of people with each other and the reaction of families and how tight everybody is with everybody, then I'm showing you, I'm not telling you, I'm showing you that it's worth the trade-off. That's the entire purpose of the whole thing. And that's why they go for independence too. They could just go along with this universal basic income, but nothing. Then what's the point? What's the point of human existence? Let me just catch up on these super chats here. Light and Salt on YouTube says, this has already happened. Think of Reddit moderators on welfare, Bugman. Reddit moderators on welfare, my God. Well, like all people who's ever used the internet, my compassion for Reddit moderators is not exceeded by anyone or anything. To me, they're the salt of the earth. They're the gift from heaven that allows the world to turn. Where would we be, I ask myself frequently, virtually every hour. Where would we be without Reddit moderators? And the answer is, I don't dare think about it. Yeah, they can go. Hey, TACWatch, looks like our friend Wesley says, universal basic services or an asset portfolio will arrive earlier. I know people working on it. Yes, if you're structured, to do that. And here's something I'm going to take to the colonies. It came when we were doing Star Citizen. That's when I first came up with the idea of the Aurora Republic, and the guy who was going to be essentially the Secretary of the Treasury. We were having a discussion about how much the tax rate should be, what the tax rate should be, flat tax, all this other stuff. And he said, no, we're going to run the government on a profit. And I said, what? No, we've got this enormous amount of cash. Because we're the government, we're going to, instead of going to deficit spending, we're going to go into active savings, so that every year the government owns a bigger and bigger pot of money out of low tax rates, and there will come a point when we will be able to pay for the government by the work that our money is doing. We will, instead of us being massively in debt and having to constantly increase our tax rate to pay off the interest on the loan, we'll be holding the loans. People will be borrowing money from the government. We'll lend it to our citizens for appropriate projects on a risk-reward benefit, and we will fund the government off of the interest. I thought, God, that's so bloody brilliant. If we had a $30 trillion surplus instead of a $30 trillion deficit, what's the percentage we spend on interest on the debt now? Is it in excess of $500 billion or more? We wouldn't need taxes anymore. The money would do the work. The money would go out and make the money. So, yeah, that's a thought for you. Let's see, did I miss anyone? I think I might have missed somebody earlier. I think somebody at the beginning did, and I can't scroll up that high. So if I missed your super chat, I'm very sorry. Please bring it back next time and just mention it. And just trying to catch up here. Okay. So there's that. Let me get my windows back in place here. Something to think about. Well, that all was from the first question. We're going to be here a long time. Oh, that was it from Trinity Waters. This is to help. Thank you very much, Marisha. This is to help Bill express just how much Donald J. Trump is the media master. I might have to refund that one because I think it's got to do with the State of the Union speech, which I did not see and have only seen little clips of. But we'll get to it when we can. My understanding is that he just completely trolled everybody. I did see the clip where he was talking about how important it is that we don't allow politicians to benefit from insider information, and apparently that got everybody in the House to applaud, including the Democrats. And after that was over, I think he said, is Nancy Pelosi here? That was great. Two questions are about so too, but it was legendary. The Democrats beclowned themselves in front of everybody. Yeah, well, we'll see. Okay, so Eric Blake, tonight the case of Don Marco Maximo Rubio. So Bill, on Sunday's Right Angle, you guys waxed eloquent on the utter magnificence of Marco Rubio's tenure as Secretary of State. First, leaving aside that he's already on record saying he'll not challenge JD to be the 28th nominee. That's very smart. I've been saying a lot. Don't be so sure that Marco will be JD's VP. He's been absolutely legendary as Secretary of State, so I wouldn't be surprised if President Vance keeps him right there where he's needed most. I think that'd be great too. Frankly, being VP might be a demotion of sorts, wouldn't you think? Completely. I forget who said it, but one of America's vice presidents said that he thought that the vice presidency, wasn't worth a warm spittoon of spit or something like that. Second, you mentioned people describing Rubio as Trump without the charisma. My response is to blink and go, huh, come again? I said that. On the contrary, Bill, I've long seen since the Tea Party days that Marco's got a lot of charisma, just a different kind than Trump's. Frankly, I felt that he's very much our own JFK without the women issues, of course. So, Bill, am I off my base on any of this? No, you're right on it, Eric. I think he's smart to stay as Secretary of State. I think he's very smart to not challenge JD for the presidency. I think he's a young man. He certainly looks and acts young. So I think that that Marco could be in position. I frankly would love to see him as the presidency. And what I actually said about charisma was that I've seen him speak in person many years ago. I thought he was great. I was 3 feet away from the guy practically. I do think that I think what I said is, and the best thing about Marco is he's Trump without the charisma. And the next thing I said was, some people have a superabundance of charisma, and that would be Trump. So what I really meant to say in a sort of a sassy kind of snap kind of way was that he doesn't have Trump's bombast. Of all the people in the administration, in fact, I would say of all the Republicans with a national reputation, I think Marco Rubio would go down easier with Democrats or marginalized voters than anybody else on our team. I think Marco Rubio is more appealing to the centrists and even the left than anybody on our team. And I would be very worried about things right now if it weren't, well, I've got serious concerns about the midterms, but it looks like I don't see anybody on the Democratic benches that's going to come up and displace Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, or even AOC. And those people are so shockingly awful that that I think our best chance in 2028 is the Democratic candidate ticket. And I'll tell you one other thing about Marco, and I think Ted Cruz deserves credit for this too. In 2016, both of them were mocked by Donald Trump. Little Marco he called him. That's a real personal hit. That's a real personal hit, and he took it. And when Trump became the nominee, he got right behind him, and so did Cruz, and so on. Mercer says GOP has Vance, Rubio, Hegseth, DeSantis, Cruz, and Tulsi in their immediate bench for POTUS, but none of them, with the exception of Rubio, all of them, with the exception of Rubio, are despised by the left. That doesn't surprise me. They despise everything, but nevertheless, Rubio in a debate, I think, would be really superb. When I said he doesn't have an overabundance of charisma, I was really taking a shot at the downside of Donald Trump's amazing media ability and his mastery of the art of trolling people. So here we go. Marisha Dark, topic, Restore Britain, second time asking. Bill, if you haven't been following Rupert Lowe, you need to drop what you're doing and take a look at this. I'm doing an awful lot, but I'm listening. I don't say that lightly. Earlier last week, he made a video announcing the launch of the Restore Britain Party. Within just 24 hours, it got over 2 million views across all platforms. Let me get this. Okay, there it is. Today, I'm launching Restore Britain as a national political party. 500,000 views. he sure looks British, and he sure looks normal. He's got kind of a meet John Doe kind of quality, like, you know, or Mr. Smith Goes to Washington kind of quality. I'll take a look at it later. Um, there's so much to cover in one sitting, but here's a small slice of his stance on immigration in text form. If you want to look it over and share it with the class, they could be extremely happy about it. One might even say, chuffed to bits. Another link. What he's saying is illegal immigrants, gone, all of them, without apology. Every man, every woman, they will all be deported. We've released the most comprehensive deportation policy ever produced in Britain, 100 pages of detailed steps to remove every single illegal migrant living in our country. It is deportation poetry. I'm already impressed. I'm already impressed. This is step one. These miscreants, I'm now more impressed, are the priority. The Sex Pests, which is a freaking punk band if I ever heard one, will be removed. The hotels will close. The flights will begin. I promise you that. Don't need to go over it. The British people know my position. Legal immigration for the foreseeable future. Far more people will leave than enter. Entire visa routes will be closed off from certain countries that are proven to supply us with sex pests. That's such a British term for pedophiles and rapists. Sex pests, you know, the ones that want to touch you in your naughty bits. Criminals, illegals, Islamists, and the rest. This is vital. It underpins our entire policy. Who would be on that red list? Albania, Pakistan, Somalia, Eritrea, Afghanistan, and plenty more. We will discriminate. We will look at the facts and then discriminate. Good. See, this guy, you're right, Marusha. This guy is he has the same, he's very strikes me as extremely polar opposite of Donald Trump, but they both have the ability to tell the truth without shame or accepting the moral low ground. I did a segment on a second segment on Amelia called "The Long Slow Goodbye," the Long Gentle Goodbye, where I showed that song where it's Amelia singing, "Hey, it's been fun. You know, we had some good times, and now it's time for you to go home. Back to the place you want to be, the place where all the stories that you tell, and the place where the marketplace has all this smell of spices and curry is everywhere." And it's such a profoundly good piece of propaganda, which I use, you know, in its kind of neutral term. If propaganda is good or bad, depending on what you're propagandizing. But you have to win that moral argument. You have to win. You have to convince people that this is the right thing to do. It's the kind thing to do, because people, and again, this comes back to the over-feminization of the West. People don't want to do things that they think are mean. That's how affluent and secure we are. It's like, well, we don't want to do anything mean. Yes, well, it's time to do some mean things, because if we don't do some mean things now, it's going to be the end of the happy times, and then everybody will be mean. I don't know. It just seems mean splitting up these families. It seems mean deporting people who've been here for 15, 20. Well, you know what? It is mean. It is. And if it turns out that that it's mean, then it's mean because these people should never have been allowed in the country in the first place. If we hadn't been a little bit tough then, we wouldn't have to break up families now. Yeah, Mauritius, P7 was saying, talking about Neil Farage, or is it Nigel? I can't remember. But I don't think Farage is the guy. I don't think he's committed enough. I think you have to go right back to this whole thing. You've got to own the moral high ground, and remigration is their only hope. You can't just turn off the spigot. You got to bail, and that means throwing people out. And look, I feel it, right? I mean, I'm an empathetic person, and I've had some rough times. But to be honest with you, I really think that you cannot not deport Islamicists who are talking about destroying the government that let them in. It's like, for an American, there's something repugnant about saying, no, we're going to chuck you out of the country because of your religion. They shouldn't have been allowed into the country because of their religion. Um, and we need to accept that. We don't have problems with Hindus. We don't have problems with Buddhists. We don't have problems with Confucians. We don't have problems with any of these other religions. We only have the problem with the one religion that everybody has a problem with, and that is because their religion tells them to take over the countries that have allowed them to come in out of kindness. Okay, all right. That's the deal. We're not kicking you out because you're a different religion. We're kicking you out because your religion tells you to kick us out. Your religion tells you to destroy our way of life. Of all the things that they do in Britain, the one thing to me that is an intolerable insult that I would not be able to abide if I was living there. When all of the Muslims go out and pray on the streets and tie up traffic, that is rubbing your nose in it. But I have seen crowds of Muslims on the grass in front of cathedrals. They are on the property of cathedrals and churches, praying on the grounds of churches. And I wouldn't tolerate that. You could grossly make the case that a street is a street, but this is just plain pissing on your flag. And I no, it's time to go. Marisha says, or to Eric Blake, that Farage has already says he won't partner with Lowe. Well, Farage apparently wants the job more than he wants his country. And that happens to pretty much everybody, because that's human nature too. Now, Woody Fool, aka Woody Fool, says, of course, Muslims pray in squares in front of empty cathedrals, and this is why you really gets clearer to me every day that you cannot maintain Western civilization without some fundamental religious belief in the morality and the rightness of your cause. I don't think I was going to say I don't think it's possible to set up a country where atheists would die for their country. And I thought, well, the Soviet Union. And I also realized, the first thing that Stalin did after Hitler invaded Russia, and Stalin had a nervous breakdown. He was gone for 2 weeks. They had to go to his dacha, and when they went to his dacha, meaning the rest of the Politburo, went to Stalin's dacha to get him to come back to work. Stalin was 100% sure they were coming to shoot him. But when Stalin finally did recover enough to speak to the Russian people in very wavering terms, he didn't appeal to the Soviet Union. He didn't appeal to godless communism. He made a religious appeal to the Rodina, to the homeland. He basically said, "My brothers and sisters, this is a religious war." He knew that people weren't going to die for a godless state. So you need some kind of moral belief system that you genuinely believe in, and this is why the image of Englishmen as Crusader knights with the armor and the sword and the white jersey with the red cross is such a powerful image, because there's a lot of horrible things associated with the Crusades, but if you think about it, these guys had to walk across the known world in the most disorganized fashion, where it's some baron or some this or that. The Crusades were just this absolute hodgepodge of people that went back to, they didn't invade the Holy Land. They went to defend the Holy Land because the Christians had been there since, what was it, 300 or so, 320 AD. And when the Muslims overran Jerusalem, the Christians went back and they walked across the world, begging for food. They didn't have transports. They didn't go in navies. They didn't have fleets. Well, there was kind of a small fleet that the Venetians ripped off. But basically, they straggled across the known world, and they beat them at home with no supply lines. So when you see, that's what's so fascinating about Amelia, is she's so physically harmless. That's the genius of it. She's not a brute. She's just a skinny little goth girl. She couldn't hurt a fly if she wanted to. And yet, there she is, and you see her with her purple hair and her leather miniskirt standing in front of an army of crusaders in armor, and the cross of St. George, and it's a powerful image, man, because we have been so soft for so long, and the thing about Islam is that they're not soft. So Islam is willing to go and shoot up a magazine's headquarters and kill everybody in there. So people say, well, you can't mess with the Muslims. If there had been a strong Christianity in England when that happened, or in France as well, at Charlie Hebdo, then the response would have been heads on spikes. And see, this is the part that's so difficult to get to. It's intellectually simple, but it's emotionally complex. What you have to do, not just in Britain but here as well, is you have to say, no, it is the moral choice to expel these people. It's the moral choice. It's not just selfish choice, it's the moral choice. If we don't, there's going to be ruins everywhere. And it'll be too late to realize how bad it is if we don't do something for it right now. And if we don't make that moral case first, we will not succeed. People don't vote based on what they think. They vote based on how they feel. Asmongold said he'd go back to church if the Pope declared a new crusade against Islam. Just think about that for a minute, Just think about it, if not only the Pope, but various Protestant denominations were to uniformly say Christianity is under lethal threat by this religion, and we've done nothing but be kind to them, and the kinder we are to them, the more they take and the stronger they get, and the more they despise us, and those days are over. Then I would like to see these Muslim groups in the streets. I want them scared of us. And unless they are, then we're not gonna get there. Just to wrap up Marusha's questions, what's important are not just his policy positions, but his unapologetic, no F's given attitude as well. I think his ban on halal and kosher food is a bit too far, but otherwise it seems like everyone in Britain, from Carl Benjamin to Tommy Robinson, are saying this is the guy we've been waiting for. In the last week, massive remigration protests have been popping up all over the UK as well. Just last thing here, Britain's problem with antithetical culture inside the walls is much greater than it is in America, because their population is much smaller, and because they don't have a Second Amendment, which means they don't have a First Amendment, and so on. They are much closer to the edge than we are, and we are in the position of turning this around. This is the thing about the Democrats. The Democrats invented gerrymandering, and when the Republicans start gerrymandering, they say this is an outrage and an attack on our democracy. And they're the ones who changed the immigration quotas. If you go look at the top 10 countries immigrating to the U.S. per decade, prior to the 80s, you'll see that it's Canada, England, Germany, Sweden, all of this. And afterwards, it's Ethiopia, Costa Rica, Colombia, all of these third world countries. And Ted Kennedy did that in order to get people to come in and vote for Democrats. Roadrunner says the UK arrest and jail people for mean tweets, but not for raping young girls. So the British people need to start a program to do what we did here, and that is identify the victims. Identify the victims. And every time they say ICE is behaving like the Gestapo, it's like ICE is deporting the people that have murdered these faces. So, yeah, good. We're going to find out. If Britain can do it, then it can be done. I was never a big Enterprise fan of the TV show. In fact, I don't know if I ever saw a whole episode, but that I am really getting very strong. Don't push the pink skins out onto the thin ice vibes. 7% in 2024 to 30 plus in 2026. And it has overtaken the Conservative Party and become almost equal to the ruling socialist leftist government. Well, the leftist socialist policies are going to continue, and that's going to push that number up. And you can make we see it here. How many times have we seen Donald Trump and the Make America Great Again movement? How many times have we seen them either sputter or completely fail because we didn't have support from Republicans, so-called Republicans, rhinos, right? You could make the case that Farage is a rhino. You could make the case that anybody who's not at this point are rhinos, and so on. And the only danger is you've got to maintain your moral core and your sense of fairness and process, or else you turn into Nick Fuentes and his Groyper army of incels, who are gonna, just proud about talking about, going to put people up against the wall. We're not going that route, and we're not going the surrender route either. You just need to make a reasonable and moral case for the removal of the people that should not have been let in here in the first place. That's what's so genius about that Amelia song. It's so because what that song says is it's not just better for England, it's better for you. It's better for you. This is what you want. You want sun on your shoulder. The only thing I would have changed about that Amelia video, the second one, the song, is that I would not have portrayed the UK as being so sunny. I believe I would have portrayed most of the times when she's in Britain, I would have portrayed it as overcast or rainy, because that makes the point even greater. Go back where the sun is on your shoulder. Go back to your sunny homelands, and you don't want to be here in this rainy place, and so don't. But I'm hesitant to criticize it at all because it's so bloody well done, and that song, which undoubtedly is AI. Is really catchy. Really catchy. Roadrunner says, weren't most of the 9/11 terrorists from Saudi Arabia? Yes. Saudi Arabia is not our friend. And why we've treated them as friends is a mystery to me. Well, it's not a mystery, but it's, I don't know. They're not our friends. Guy Bala, I completely agree with you that bearing false witness is a very serious crime, probably why it's among the 10 Commandments. So then how come it's acceptable for a lawyer to get up in front of a court and proclaim that their client is innocent when they themselves know for certain that it's a complete lie? To my way of thinking, that's also bearing false witness. Would justice be better served when a lawyer knows for a fact that their client is guilty if they put more effort into finding a fair and reasonable punishment instead of no punishment at all? We as Americans are entitled to a fair trial, but not a get-out-of-free card if we're guilty, correct? I think this is revisiting the argument we talked about last time, which is great. Are not the victims re-victimized whenever the guilty party is set free without punishment? If the guilty party commits another crime that everyone who participated in is not punishing them the first time, complicit in their future crimes, including the defense attorney? I do agree that if a client is in fact innocent, that the defense attorney should do everything possible to get their client found innocent, but those rare cases are not what I'm talking about here. I also agree that it's better to have 10 guilty people go free than have one innocent person punished. Are there reasonable ways to decrease the number of guilty people going unpunished without jeopardizing the innocent? Would you agree that if you are innocent and being falsely charged or even guilty and have a good lawyer, that we have probably got the best legal system there is? On the other hand, if you're a victim of a crime, we have one of the worst. Well, as has been said about capitalism and apparently about democracy, it's not a perfect system, may not even be a good system. It's just the best one that lives on Earth, as we do. So let's kind of go back to this again. The problem is, look, I'm very sympathetic to what you're saying. As I said, I could not sleep at night, Guy, if I was, especially if I got a guy off the hook when I knew for a fact that he did it. Mauricio says, yeah, it's the worst system except for all of the others. But the reality of life on Earth is, among many, many issues that could be a lot simpler, we don't know the truth. In many cases, we don't know. So we've come up with a system where we have, and I think correctly, determined that we have the greatest possible good and the least big society-wise long-term failure to assume that everybody is innocent until proven guilty, even in the cases where we know that's true. And the reason I say that is because here's where I'm not trying to see where your argument falls. It's just, I think this is why we have this belief. If we were to say that a person who was known to be guilty should not get legal representation, and that defense attorneys should not, for whatever reason, be defending people for whom it is known that they are guilty, that makes perfect sense to me. The problem in the real world is, where is that line drawn? Because things like guilt and innocent aren't binary. For example, I would be willing to bet you that if I was a defense attorney, just looking at statistics and recidivism, if I was a defense, let's say I'm trying a murder case, I'm not going there, Gerber. I'm just setting up the framework. Let's say there's a murder case, and let's say that this person has a 17-page record, including armed robbery and assault, and maybe even a prior conviction for murder that either was found not guilty. Let's say you had somebody who seemed to be unquestionably guilty, but you don't know that he did. And so my question is, if we could tell that this person is definitely guilty and therefore doesn't deserve a defense, that'd be fine if you could prove that without any doubt. Forget a reasonable doubt. So we can't. Now, I certainly agree with you that out on the extremes, there's cases where people either have confessed or their DNA is everywhere. Look, when I remember during the O.J. Simpson trial, when I found out that Ron's blood was in O.J.'s car, I said, "That's it, man. That's it. There is no possible there's no possible explanation for that. None." I knew he was guilty. So that level of overriding evidence, yeah, and the Bronco, Matt Harris says the Bronco ride, that level of overriding evidence is so compelling that you want to go to something like this. But the question is, okay, what if? Because I mean, we all know the basics of of the the OJ trial. What if Ron's blood was not in OJ's car? What if everything else was there but not that? Well, then there'd be slightly less evidence that he did it. And then what if you start peeling these things away, right? The window of doubt opens up, and we don't know where to draw that line. And since it's a spectrum, this, I hate to really equate it to this, but honestly, I think it kind of comes down to the abortion issue. The pro-abortion, I don't use publicity terms like pro-choice and pro-life. It's pro-abortion, anti-abortion. It's a procedure. That's what we're talking about. Let's stop painting this thing. Let's just call it what it is. The pro-abortion people have to establish a point at which this zygote, embryo, fetus, whatever, baby, they have to establish a point at which it becomes human. Because if it's human the whole way, then it's murder. So if you listen to the pro-abortion argument, it always comes down to it's just a clump of cells. Well, we're all clumps of cells. And so since there is no place on that spectrum from conception to birth, there's no place on that spectrum where something happens that didn't happen yesterday, including the first heartbeat. You can't make a decision based on the spectrum. You have to go to the absolutes. Either it becomes a human being at birth or at conception. There is nothing that happens between conception and birth that is a landmark dividing line. It's got to be birth or conception. And aside the fact that there's no scientific evidence whatsoever for it being anything other than conception, they have to put that down. Which is why, if you really, really, really want to get on top of the abortion debate, you need to ask them: would it be legal to abort a baby and kill the baby if that baby was due tomorrow, or if the woman had just gone into labor, let's say, and she decides at that moment that she's just gone into labor, and the baby's going to be born in 4 hours, and at that moment she decides, my body, my choice. Is that not a human that you're killing there? This is where you get them, because there is no argument for this. It's either conception or it's birth, and it's clear what the answer is there. The same kind of thing with this. I'm not saying it's the exact opposite, the exact same issue, but you either have to defend everybody, or you have to assume that a human being is incapable of making error about a person's guilt or innocence. And if we were incapable of making error, then I'd be with you 100%, but we're not. So yes, there are some people on one side of the spectrum that are absolutely guilty, and defending them feels repugnant because it is. But since we're talking about a societal change where everything gets muddier and muddier and muddier, you have to go with one or the other. And you have to, in my opinion, the only thing that we can do in a world where things are not known with certainty is you have to assume the conception argument, right? You have to assume, okay, we don't know fully if they're innocent or guilty. Clearly some people are guilty, but we don't know how much evidence it takes to make them guilty, beyond any doubt. So since we can't know that, we have to commit to the endpoint. We have to commit to the idea that everybody has the presumption of innocence, and the reason you can't take that away is because nobody knows where to draw the line. This is what my dad told me when my dad went to Germany to fight Nazis, and he got there in April of '45, so he was never shot at, but he went. And when I was, I don't know, I was probably 6 or 7, whatever. Whenever the Nazis, I'm pretty sure it was when the Nazis marched through Skokie. And I said to him, Dad, why are they allowed to do this? I thought this is why we fought the war. And my dad hated those bastards, and I do too. Um, and he said, Billy, the problem is not banning people or speech that is clearly repugnant to everybody. The problem is, where do you draw the line? And actually what he said was, who decides? Which is a much better argument. Who decides? And from that point on, I saw the wisdom of it. Yeah, early 70s sounds about right. I would have been maybe 11, old enough to understand it, 10, 11, something like that. So I think we live in an imperfect world, and we build the best systems we can. And of all of the systems that are built into the American experiment, which came from Great Britain, then it couldn't have been Skokie. It must have been they were marching somewhere else. The presumption of innocence is, if you eliminate the presumption of innocence, you eliminate free thinking and free speech, because anybody can make an accusation. And if you've ever been accused of anything you didn't do, you will know that the most devastating aspect of being accused of something you didn't do is that it is virtually impossible to prove that you didn't do something. I mean, the example I used when I was much younger is, I cannot prove to you in a court of law that a flying saucer didn't come down into my backyard last night, take my cat out on a trip to Venus, and then bring it back before I woke up. I cannot prove that didn't happen. And obviously I'm reaching for something that's as far out there as possible, but I can't prove it didn't happen. And so, you have to go with what you got. So that's my take on it. And and there have been, obviously, the number of people who are innocent, the number of people who are guilty of crimes that go free is overwhelming compared to the number of people who are innocent and punished. But if you've ever seen these cases of these people who've been in prison for 40 years, and then finally DNA evidence comes up that exonerates them, that makes me sick. And you can imagine the horror of that. And if you believe in divine justice, then they're going to get that. But Roadrunner says, what about the J6 folks still in prison? Is anybody still in prison from J6? The Rough Ryan says, any innocent person that has been incarcerated, there has to be restitution beyond their wildest dreams. I couldn't agree more. I would be absolutely fine with $1 million for every year that they're locked up. If you've been locked in prison for 40 years for something you didn't do, $40 million you can't. The most precious thing that you have is time, and you have lost. You have irretrievably lost the prime of your life, which means your most precious thing. So, there you go. P7 2017 says, I'm not asking for perfect consistency, but would be staying consistent across the cell. Single sentence be too much to ask. I don't know if you're talking about me or probably maybe because I just tend to drift, but in any event, there you go. Eric says, pretty sure Trump pardoned them en masse. I was too. And he's still in prison, are there on state charges? Well, I just want to be really clear on this, right? In any human system here on planet Earth, there are going to be injustices. There are going to be mistakes. There are going to be errors. And it is impossible to eliminate those errors. The system will generate errors. The best you can hope for is to create a system that minimizes the errors and has means of correcting or repairing the damage from those errors. But even then, you're gonna live in a world of errors because we live in the real world. We live in a world of imperfection, and being okay. I'm not okay with it. I'm not okay with injustice. I accept the fact that it is the price that comes with the best system that we've been able to devise so far, other than ruled by angels. If we were ruled by angels, we wouldn't need courts or anything. But we're not, so we do. When you talk about these mass shooters or any of these other horrific crimes, when people bring this up and say, oh, this country is just nothing but crime, and I just want to say, what percentage of the U.S. population has murdered somebody? And that's the failure rate. So is that 1 in a million? Is it 1 in 10 million? 1 in 100 million? Is it 1 in 300 million? What's the failure rate per year? And I did the math on this a long time ago. And if you look at things like mass shootings or something like that, then the failure rate per human is approaching Six Sigma, which is a manufacturing standard for excellence. That's one failure for 6 standard deviations. That's a very low number. And so if you're looking at Americans as widgets that came out of a factory, the failure rate is very, very low. The number of defective products that we put out compared to the total volume of what we put out is astonishingly low. It's not zero, and everybody concentrates on the part that's not zero, but as a percentage, it's extremely low. Dave says, I go for 8 Sigma because it's one higher. I'm going for 11. A lot of people want to stop at 10 Sigma, but I'm going for 11. F it. F it. We're going for 4 blades. And by the way, Immersion mentions, was talking about DNA samples. The conviction rate, it's much harder to get away with something today if you are guilty than it used to be even 20, 30 years ago, and certainly easier than it was before fingerprinting and so on. It is getting harder and harder and harder sharply harder for guilty people to get off, to be exonerated for crimes that they did commit. That percentage of guilty people going free is getting smaller and smaller and smaller because of the advances in forensic science. And I think that's one of the reasons why people are so fascinated with all these CSY, not CSY, special victims units, all of these things. People are interested in that. It's the same CSI. Thank you. They say the CSI episode is the same thing every single week, and there are like 4 of them or 5 of them in Miami, New York, and all the rest of it. Especially New York with our friend Gary Sinise. The much bigger problem is what Roadrunner points out here, which is the judges keep letting people go free. Yes, that's the problem. If we locked up the 3% of people that commit virtually all of the crimes in this country, we locked up 3% of the population, crime would go down by 95%. And I don't think that reservoir would refill itself. I think you just need to accept the fact that we need to have, 9 million people in prison? Okay, that's a lot of people. But we have a lot of people. So there we go. Okay, so we got coming up here, we got Crikey, we got Roadrunner, we got Capital G Geek, Braden Higby, Marisha Dark. Okay. Crikey. And I love that it's Crikey, exclamation mark. Crikey here. Hey, mate, I watched the State of the Union address, enjoyed the President of the United States so easily expose the Democratic Party before U.S. citizens and the world as crazy and morally bankrupt. Crazy is important. Morally bankrupt is the key to victory. Morally bankrupt. That's the key to victory. My question is, how did Donald Trump's speech, assuming you watched the address, leave you feeling as an American as a result of this address? Do you think it changed or informed hearts and minds? If so, how? Cheers and peace from down under. Well, good on you, Craigie, on Yassies. I'll just give you my answer as it came into my head. I would prefer to live in a country where the president could be erudite, logical, charismatic, without being bombastic or trolling or anything. I would prefer to live in that world. But we don't live in that world, and we haven't lived in that world for a long time. And I was talking to someone I hadn't seen in a long time, and they said they never got over the fact that 2 days after the Mitt Romney loss in 2012, I said that the next president was going to come from the pop culture and that he was going to be a Republican. But you go to war with the army you have, which has been widely mocked, but is an extraordinarily true statement. And I can't spare this man. He fights. I would like it if there was somebody who was. I never use this word because I despise this word, but honestly, I would like it if we could have a president who was as effective as Donald Trump, but was considerably classier than Donald Trump, who was less inclined to bombast, less inclined to vulgarity in terms of, all of this stuff. More Reagan, exactly. Yes, exactly. That's exactly right, Roadrunner. More Reagan. Reagan, that's precisely what I'm looking for. I would like it if we had that, but we don't. And that person cannot exist in this environment. The left has made the process so toxic, and the overwhelming barrage of narrative from so many different sources means that the only way you can break the spell is to throw bombs at things. So I completely 100% without reservations of any kind support Donald Trump, and his ability to troll people is essential. It's essential. But I wish that we lived in a world that was less combative and less divisive, and frankly a world that had a lot less lying than what's going on with the media and all the rest of it. But we don't. And this is the difference between conservatives and liberals. Conservatives can accept the fact that reality is what reality is, and you have to deal with the cards that you're dealt. And the cards that were dealt say that a man who's been so demonized and so unfairly demonized, called a Nazi and a pedophile, all the rest of it, there is no choice but to hit back hard and below the belt. And yeah, I wish it, but wishing doesn't make it so. And I'm not a believer in magical thinking, so Trump is the guy because he's the only guy that can do it. I like to think that someday the left will be defeated, not even by Donald Trump, but by its contact with reality, and we could go back to something that's a little more statesmanlike. But until that point, we've got to look. We're in a war with the Japanese, where the Japanese throw up the white flag. We send medics because we're good people and we have moral standards, and then the Japanese wounded guy pulls a pin on a grenade and kills 4 medics or 4 corpsmen or whatever, and that's the reality of what the enemy has decided to do. And so now we have to play by his rules or else we lose. And I'd like to think that after I know for a fact that after World War II, these good, decent, honorable men came home, and they didn't shoot people who were lying on the ground waving white flags when they came home. But they had to do it, and because they had to do it, they did it. And after it was over, they stopped doing it. Same thing happened after the Civil War. Peace Up in 2017 says that's just it. Bill, was Reagan mean enough to do the kind of damage that seems we need to do? No, Reagan would not survive in this environment because Reagan is too pleasant, too affable, and too decent. The left has created an environment that is so toxic that only people who have learned how to survive in toxic environments can do the job. And I cannot imagine a more vicious environment than the New York real estate market. So, famously enough, Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill could argue about politics and then go out for a drink together as a couple of Irishmen. That's inconceivable with Nancy Pelosi or Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. It's inconceivable. The teams have become much more radicalized. Have you ever seen that diagram of a guy who's like, okay, here's a conservative, here's me, and here's a leftist. And then years later, and years later, and years later, the left goes further and further left. So now he's so much closer to conservatives, he hasn't moved at all. Yes, you need a guy who can fight dirty because the people who have been trying to destroy this country fight dirty. And all I'm saying about it is, I would like it if we didn't have to fight dirty, but we do, so we do. So it's just it's wishing on a star. That's not going to change my view of reality, and that means that since reality is reality, we got to deal with reality whether we like it or not, and that's the way to do it. And he's a master at this. He's an absolute master at this. Of all the things, by the way, of all of the things that Trump, that mark the difference between the way conservatives think of Trump and the way that liberals think of Trump, is this business about a third term. This is trolling on a level that is beyond my understanding. There is zero chance that Donald Trump is going to run for a third term. Zero. And all of us know it. And all of us know he's just pushing their buttons to make them act crazier. And they cannot believe it. They are so certain that this man is a dictator that Trump has come out and said, yeah, if I feel like running for a third term, then I will. And they buy it. There's zero chance. Now, if it turns out that they, which is of course impossible, but if it turned out that they were to repeal the, I forget which amendment it was about the 2-term limit, then I wouldn't have a problem with it. But if Donald Trump were to run for a third term with that amendment in place, I would be calling for his arrest. And so would you. And since we know that, we know what he's doing, but they don't believe it. And that's somebody nailed this perfectly. They said the difference between conservatives and liberals is that conservatives take Trump figuratively but not literally, and the liberals take Trump literally but not figuratively. So, did he actually say that? Or Steve Young says, "I will award myself the Medal of Honor, Trump." Right? Rich says, technically there is a way you can have a third term, get appointed House Speaker, then POTUS and VP resign. He inherits the post through secession, having never been elected to a third term as the amendment requires. Okay, seriously but not literally. That's right. Sorry. So yes, conservatives take him seriously but not literally. Liberals take him literally but not. You know what I mean? I just choked all over that. You get the idea. It was Scott Adams who said that. Figures it was. Trump said he's going to award himself the Medal of Honor. That's trolling. And they believe it. And he does this on purpose. He understands that the more he provokes them, the crazier they get. The crazier they get, the more they're going to crash out on camera. Roadrunner. Hey, Roadrunner, how are you? Greetings again, friend Bill. Hello, Roadrunner. It appears that the Democrats are indoctrinating themselves to hate the United States. Is there any alternative universe where this is a good idea? Yes, I've seen this. It's a chart that shows even as recently as 2000, Republicans were at 90% liking America, and Democrats were at 87%. Republicans have actually gone up. Now we're at 92% love America, but Democrats are at 36%. So it's an incredible wide idea. This is something to genuinely fear. This is something to be genuinely worried about, because if we don't counter this argument, it becomes true by default. And this is what happens with all of these great. This is why the big lie is easier to believe than the little lie. To some degree, we're seeing a little bit of it in terms of its, because that argument that America is an evil place does not survive contact with reality. And the left is constantly talking about how all of the MAGA supporters have left the Trump train, and we're abandoning Trump by droves, and we've all woken up to the fact the whole thing. I haven't seen a single Republican or conservative who has said, I'm done with Trump. It's much better to be a liberal. I was wrong about Trump. I regret my vote. I've never, ever seen one of them in person or even heard one, as hearsay. But there does seem to be cases where the left is running into the consequences of their actions. And the most visible example is how Mamdani handled the snowfall in New York. And I'm seeing liberals saying, hey, we voted for free bus rides, which is probably the most trivial of his promises. Hasn't happened. There's no people to shovel snow, so Mamdani says, hey, if you want to volunteer, we'll start you at $19 an hour. You have to show 2 forms of ID. Isn't that interesting? It is, Marisha Dark says, Babylon B headline, devastating. Black New Yorkers unable to shovel driveways as none of them have ID. Babylon B. I actually didn't think it was possible to be conservative and fun. I just genuinely didn't think it was possible. But they surpass the Onion by an order of magnitude. The kind of things that we should be promoting, and by promoting, I mean we should have had this woman at the State of the Union speech. This is one thing the Democrats were really superb at, and that is they would invite, and we've done it too. We should have, assuming we can get her. There was a video that made the rounds not too long ago. It was about a black woman who left America and went to Africa. I don't remember what country in Africa. I understand that Africa is not a country, but I don't remember the name of the country, but it was Africa. And she had a business in the U.S., and she and her family moved to Africa, and she made a video about how much she wanted to come back. She said the electricity is on or off, depending. There are gigantic spiders. There's no fresh water. There's no snacks. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. We got lizards in the bathroom. on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And what Donald Trump should have done is, Kenya, Infidel says, what Donald Trump should have said, assuming she would agree, is put her up in the gallery, point to her, and then explain the story. That, like so many other people, they believed that the United States is a horrible place, and every time they believe it enough so that the very few of them actually do leave, they want to come back immediately. And that's when I would have hit Rosie O'Donnell with both closed fists in the gloves, and that's when I would have had a jab and then a right cross and knocked Rosie O'Donnell out of the park, because first of all, he loves going after Rosie O'Donnell, and secondly, Rosie O'Donnell came back on a scouting mission to see if it was safe to be back in America. What does that tell you? That this woman is trying to move back to America. If there was not, it's difficult to imagine a person who's had such a loud opinion about how horrible this country is under this tyrant, and she moved out of the country, and within a year she's trying to move back. I would have absolutely pounded that thing into the ground. I wouldn't have given that thing a break, you know. I would have said, I would have trolled her. I would have said, Rosie, don't worry, you know. The only people that concern us about anti-Americanism are people who have influence or some sort of social relevance. You're completely safe as far as that is concerned. You know, welcome back. You know, it's. I think the people that you owe an apology to are the Irish. But this is how you fight. This is how you fight back. I really think the answer, and this is not a practical solution, but clearly the answer to the America's a horrible place is to have the government pay for. Seriously now, I mean it, because it's an insignificant price compared to the potential damage. The government should pay for anyone who actively speaks against the United States and says they'd rather live somewhere else. I think we should pay for them to go and live in another country for a year. Pay their travel expenses, not their living expenses, their travel expenses. Put them on a C-17. And you know, have a great time. And in exchange for us flying you out of this hellhole, we'll interview you in 3 months and see how you feel. So that's the only way you really get rid of that problem, is to have people experience life somewhere else. Because these progressives always compare life in America to life in heaven. In heaven, I don't have to work, and in heaven, I get free health care, and in heaven, I get this, and in heaven, I get that, and in heaven, I'm celebrated for my trans identity, and in heaven, and in heaven, and in heaven, and heaven, and that's why America sucks, because America sucks compared to heaven. And when they actually have to live on Earth and go to another actual country, then they find out that whatever flaws America may have, it's the least flawed country in a flawed world. Go to Canada for the health care. This is another thing we should be doing to combat this problem, Roadrunner. I had heard that 40,000 Canadians died last year because their healthcare system didn't get to them in time. They either simply didn't get the treatment they needed in time, or they were sent home with some pain pills to go home and die in peace. Very long time ago, when I first started doing this, I went to Ottawa and spoke to Canadian conservatives up there, and the guy who brought me up there was a surgeon. Like his little group of private doctors. This is not long after Obamacare. And here's what he said. I'll get to you in a second. They're fighting Fedora because I do have an answer for that. What he said was, he was an oncologist, and he said to me privately, he said, Bill, here's the difference between our two systems. First of all, we have a two-tier healthcare system. If you think that Justin Trudeau waits in line like everybody else, then you're wrong. But this is what he said, and this meant so much to me. He said, in Canada, if you get a diagnosis that looks like it's going to be fatal, then you're dead. He said, in America, you're not dead until you're dead. And I said, that's a profound thing to say. What do you mean by that? He says, in Canada, if you have, I'm improvising here, stage 4 cancer or stage whatever, and some group of bureaucrats or rules made by bureaucrats that you don't know have come to the conclusion that you are unlikely to survive, and so we have decided that the best course of action for the state is we will give you pain medications, you can go home and die. He says, in America, you're not dead until you're dead. He says, every single week, and this was in 2010 or 11, he said, every single week I get people calling me who are either friends of mine or friends of a friend who have been condemned to death by the Canadian healthcare system, and they call me and say, is there anything we can do? And what I tell them is, yes, there is. It turns out, again, I'm just making up this example of what he actually stated. He said, as it turns out, the University of Florida is doing tests on your particular kind of cancer, and they are showing a survival rate of between 35 and 50% on this experimental drug. Would you be interested in taking that? And I'm thinking, if it's me or my wife or my daughter or mom, I don't have any kids, but if somebody said to me, your chances are stay here in Canada and watch them die, or send them someplace that has a 30% chance or a 5% chance or a 1% chance, I'm going to take that chance. And his entire practice really came down to referring him to what American hospitals or universities were working on that particular kind of cancer and what kind of success they'd achieved and whether or not he could get them into the program. Because if somebody says go home and die, and you find out that there's an experimental drug program going on that has a 10% chance of success, I'm taking the 10%, man. And that is, that's it. I forget the number, but it was something like the entire nation of Canada does not have as many MRI machines as someplace like, I don't know, certainly smaller than Cleveland. It was like Jacksonville or something. There's more MRIs in Jacksonville than there are in Canada. Okay, go there and die for free. You're proud of your free health care? Go there and die for free. Won't cost you a dime to die there. And this is the kind of conversation we're having. Go to a country with socialized medicine so that you with their free health care, go there and die for free. It's the same in Great Britain and all the rest of it. Remember that kid, that was several years ago now, there was a British young child, might have been even a baby, that had a terminal disease, but there was an American program that had shown tremendous success with this, and the parents wanted to get their kid to America to get this treatment, and the American doctor came to Great Britain and says, we have a high probability of saving this child's life, and the British government wouldn't let them out. No, it wasn't Spain, it was definitely Britain. They would not let him out. They legally barred him from leaving the country because they knew that if this kid left the British healthcare system and went to America and was cured, it would be an indictment of their entire system. So they legally kidnapped that child and imprisoned him in the hospital until he died. Yes, the NHS sued to keep that kid in the country. If I was that parent I really think that that would be enough for me to shoot the place up. Um, and and the same thing in Canada. It's like people in Canada are paying for, in many cases, they're paying for their health care twice. They're paying incredible tax rates to fund their national health service, and then if they've got a problem, what they very often do, if it's a serious problem and a pressing problem, is they will fly to America, pay again to get treated, that year. So, uh, now, look, the American healthcare system is a bloody mess. It's a bloody mess for all of the wrong reasons because we have created this mutant combination of government and big business that has completely destroyed what used to be an unbelievably amazing healthcare system. So let me give you two examples here, okay? Personal examples that happened to me within the last year. Um, when Natasha fell and she didn't just break her wrist. The inside, I think this is the radius. This bone here, she fell so hard that this bone actually split because the force was so great. It split this little kind of knob that holds the rest of those bones in place. It split off. Um, I took her to Encino Hospital. Encino is a pretty good neighborhood. And we were in the emergency room for 7 hours, during which they administered one x-ray and one pain pill and charged us $6,500. We had to pay $1,000 an hour to sit there in pain and not get any treatment at all. The insurance took that number down to a mere $1,500, which we had to pay. So that's horrible. But when it came time to fix this problem, we went to one of the best surgeons in the country, which means one of the best surgeons in the world. And he said that this surgery was probably going to cost in the neighborhood of $25,000 to $30,000, and that the insurance would cover most of that, and that we would be out about $5,000. Okay. And then he said, a couple days later, he said, "Look, I can either do this at Cedars-Sinai in Encino. I'd prefer to do it in Beverly Hills. They've got a better crew there." And I said, and he said, "That's probably going to cost you another 1,500, $2,000. I said, I just want to go for the best. I don't care. Just I want the best. I don't want to have my wife dealing with problems and then me have to ask myself, does this lifelong problem exist because I tried to save, $1,500? But let me just say this. So that was a steep price. But when we got to Cedars-Sinai in Beverly Hills, we went in there. Natasha got into a private prep room. Excuse me. They put her in a gown that was hooked up to a hose, and that hose blew air into the gown, and that she had in her hand a little knob that she could adjust to make her comfortable down to within a degree or two. If she was feeling hot, they could blow cool in there. She could just keep warming it up till she was comfortable. So we were in that room for about an hour, hour and a half, and then when it came time for her surgery, before her surgery, it was 4 or 5. I think it was 5. 5 people came into the private room she was in, and said, "Hello, I'm your anesthesiologist. This is what we're going to be doing," and so on. "Do you have any questions?" And the assistant anesthesiologist came in, all of this stuff. And when they finally wheeled her into the OR, she said that she thought she was being wheeled into a movie set because when she got into the OR, there were, I think, 15 people in there. And all of them came over to say hi. All of them introduced themselves. And there were, I mean, some significant number of those people were there for the preparation. But when it became time for the surgery, there were probably 8 or 9 people in that room, top quality people. Now, we pay a ton of money for health insurance, but nobody in the planet gets that level of care. The surgeon had designed a wrist brace. I thought it would just be a plate. It's a metal brace that's still in there, and it looks like it was designed by Vulcans and sent back in time, 400 years. In fact, I don't know why it is, but there's something about that brace that impressed me so much. I'm going to grab a picture of it and put it up there for you. Hang on a second. Hang on, it's worth the wait. Strange why this doesn't show up here. Well, I'll send it over from my phone because it's worth it. Okay. All right. Yeah, it's just worth seeing. Yeah, Bionic Natka. I just was so impressed by this thing. Sorry for the dead air. I hate this. It'd be nice to say, "Hey, Jamie, pull up that X-ray for me, will you?" There it is. I just think it's cool. Take a look at this. So this was custom designed. I guess it was custom printed. It's titanium. And this is what they put into her wrist. Please accept this image. No, of course not. Hang on. Here it is. So, yeah. There it is. Hang on, YouTube. There you go. And those long, kind of, noodly looking things at the top, those white things, those are screws. They screwed that right through her bone. If you look at the right side, the upper right-hand corner, to the right of where the Y split on the braces, you can see a little bit of bone that's still dislodged because that whole thing was completely done. It was just off. So, the question is, why does this cost this much, and why is insurance so expensive? And I need to make this public. It was. I still haven't done the whole series. I should do this tomorrow. when I did the virtual presidency thing, um, the DVD was a membership benefit, and and I talked about healthcare, and I started by holding up an aspirin. I was at the Oval Office. I held up an aspirin, and I said, if you take this is a regular Bayer aspirin, you can buy it in a box of in a jar of 100 for like $20. So this is 2 cents per pill. Um, or whatever the math was, it was 2 cents per pill, right? If you go to the hospital and they give you this exact same pill, you'll be charged $20 for it. So that's not 10 times, that's not 100 times, that's 1,000 times more when it's purchased through the insurance. And one of the many reasons for this is because uninsured people come to the hospital. Unlike what the Europeans think, we don't just throw them to the curb and say, go out there and die. We treat them, and if they can't pay, it gets absorbed by the hospital that passes the prices on to the patients. But the real reason it costs all of this is because we used to have a system where if you got sick, you would pay a doctor $1 worth of health care. And now what you have to do is that $1 worth of health care goes to the government, and the government strips off 30 cents of that with their standing army of bureaucracy, goes over to the insurance company, strips off another 30 cents of that for their standing army of bureaucrats and red tape. And the dollar that you pay for your health care, 30 cents comes back to the actual doctor. So if we just gave the doctor the dollar, then doctors wouldn't have to see 3 times as many patients to make the same amount of money. And all of this stuff is all tied up in all of this. And all of that stuff is true. So until we can get that $20 aspirin tablet down to 2 cents, we're going to have this problem. And there's a lot of financial incentives why people don't want to get that down to 2 cents. But it is the worst possible combination of all worlds. And that's what we've got. So when you realize how many of our problems are so easy to solve if we didn't just stake ourselves to the ground, it's incredible. I just want to deal with something that's been over here. It's been really, really nice. A couple of them, one in particular, Gabbing Val with a $10 super chat says, thanks for sharing your thoughts and opinions. I always enjoy listening to you, and I've learned so much through the years. You're very welcome. And then a number of comments from the Fighting Fedora says, hey, Bill, I pop in to remind you that you once asked why your stream doesn't do well. Get in the mix with other voices fighting the good fight. And I really do want to address that because it's really important. Because believe me, I feel this a lot. So let me just deal with that real quick. Some of this may be making me attempting to make a virtue out of necessity, but nevertheless, I'm off the healthcare thing now. This is going specifically to the get back out there and do more firewalls and things like that. So I really want to address that. So somewhere along the line, there was a time when I was doing firewalls, and a poorly performing firewall would be 300,000, 400,000 views, which is certainly worth the effort. And then actually it was almost between two. It really went from, it didn't like slowly decrease. All of a sudden it went from 400,000 views to 25 or 30,000 views. And of the last 4 firewalls or 5 that I did, I don't think one of them broke 25,000 views. Now, let me tell you what I got out of that. It wasn't a question of me not wanting to do the work for a smaller audience. It was a question of what has changed and what does that mean. We've had several times here where I have seen in real time somebody take a wrench to the algorithm. What I mean by that is we would be getting 25 or 30,000 views on a right angle consistently. consistently over years, and overnight it would drop down to 11,000. Overnight. There's no explanation for that survives some external force acting on that. There's plenty of explanations for why you could lose viewers over time. Maybe they just get tired of it. Maybe you're not doing as good a job as you used to. Maybe you're burned out. Whatever. But that would be a gradual decline. But that's not what we saw, and we saw it many times on right angles and afterburners. We just saw this, and then that, and then that. So, number one, there's nothing I can do about that. But I also saw something that's really kind of wasn't just depressing. It was devastating. Other conservative commentators have moved into this space and are getting insane numbers. Asmongold is one of them. I watch his videos not terribly regularly, but often. And he's getting million views, 800,000 views. And with all due respect to him, I am deeply appreciative of the fact that he is fighting the good fight. But I hear him say things that he really hasn't thought out well. But my point is this. Matt says he built his base from gaming first. Yes, he is a force of good in the world, and he's good at what he does, and I've watched several of his videos and so on. I haven't learned anything from his videos, and what this is telling me is that it's not even the algorithm. The audience has moved on. It is not the same audience that was there when I was standing in front of a green screen and in front of a lake of fire, or whatever the case may be, or in my my virtual afterburner set. An ancient boomer standing there lecturing to people for 8 minutes, even if it's good lecture, and many of them were, is just not a product that is selling anymore. And it was a really difficult thing to come to grips with. It took me years and years and years, and frankly, a lot of depression and a lot of anger about it. But reality is reality, and we've been talking about this before. The platform has moved on. And not only has a platform moved on, I have done 300 of them. And I don't have anything new to say that I haven't said already on these things. And there comes a point where, look, I'm being as honest as I can here and as forward and transparent as I can be about it. I absolutely understand that nobody goes to a Rolling Stone concert to hear the latest version to hear the latest songs that the Rolling Stones may have written. They go there to hear, Satisfaction and Start Me Up and all this stuff. So they love the regulars, but I can understand why. If you've sung Satisfaction 30,000 times, you don't. It's not the same as the first time you did it. So if I was just sitting here going to weed, I wouldn't. I would do my best to get back in the fight as much as I could. It's not Infidel said you shot your wad, so to speak, and Airtiki said you lose a passion. It's actually neither of those. It's actually neither of those. I have plenty of things to say still, and plenty of things that I'm passionate about. I have outgrown the toolbox that I have. I was offered a recurring slot at Daily Wire when Daily Wire really got off the ground. I turned it down. I've had a chance, certainly had at least overtures to doing my own radio show, and I turned them down. I look at guys like Ben Shapiro. I'm being just brutally honest here. I look at guys like Ben Shapiro or Matt Walsh or somebody like that, and I say, those people are exactly where they need to be, where they want to be. This is what they want to do. Bill Maher is doing exactly what he wants to do, and this has never been my first choice of what I wanted to do. And then in September, on September 8th, actually, 2 days before Charlie was killed, prior to that, I had been working for years on traditional CGI, computer graphics, and I did the Major Mace Mattingly tests, and I spent so much time doing CGI. I was looking at CGI output so much that I genuinely believed that things like the interview I did with the 4 astronauts in Unreal Engine, I genuinely believed that that was photorealistic. I really did. I really thought that you couldn't tell it was computer graphics because I've been staring at computer graphics for so long. And thank you, Woody Fool. I also spent 5 years doing 4 historical series for Daily Wire, which I'm extraordinarily proud of. I did Apollo 11 for 4 episodes. I did the Cold War for 13 episodes. I did America's Forgotten Heroes for 7, and then I did Empire of Terror for 8. So that took 5 years, and I think those are timeless. I'm enormously proud of them. I just wish people could see them. But back to the point. Having done 300 of these statement things like that, and the virtual presidency, which I will put online because I just can't believe I've done that yet. That was 12 years ago, 13 now. I've watched what people are watching on YouTube, and I have come and what I've realized is that the kind of stuff that I've done is not drawing the eyeballs of the people who need to see it. And preaching to the choir sometimes is important. I used to refer to that as going down the line handing out ammunition, but it's not changing the things that we need to change. So when the AI video technology suddenly dropped out of space, it just dropped on our lap. The first thing I did was something for Memorial Day where I generated the faces of a guy from the Revolution, Civil War, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and the Gulf, and the realism and the emotion in those things were so incredible. And once I got it dialed in, every face that was coming out was great. I just said, okay, now I get to use my toolbox. Now I get to use all the things that I was trained to do and that I love doing. I was a theater major. I'd been making movies since I was 17, and now I had the ability to not be standing there in first person talking. Now I could do entire casts of characters. I could set them anywhere I wanted to. I could use music. I could use dialogue. I could use a nemesis in terms of a villain. I could do all these things. And then for my entire 50 years of my life, since I was 16, I've wanted to do a science fiction universe. And all of a sudden the tools were there. And then on September 8th, I was emceeing an event for a small conservative foundation, and somebody got up in the middle of the actual pitch and donated $250,000 on the spot. And I said to myself, okay, for that kind of money, I can change the world. So this somebody said, Mersh said, Bill's virtual presidency stuff is online. It is. It's just not on my channel, and not all of those are there. So I need to put them out on my channel. Anyway, what did I just do? No, okay. So anyway, I'm getting to this. So it is actually really reasoned. So when I realized that somebody finally put the technology in my hands to do what I was trying to do with CGI for 20 years, and that is make product that doesn't look like, make movies, a movie studio, and instead of it costing $100 million, it costs 1% of that. um, that's when I realized that I finally get a chance to do what I'm really good at. And I know many of you have seen the tests and you've been very supportive about the tests, but I'm telling you, when I get a chance to put finished product out there, only then will you really appreciate the awesome power of this fully armed and operational Bill Whittle station. When I get and we're at the point now where we are actually starting to generate frames for this vertical slice part of the colonies. That will change the world, and it'll be watched by the people that need to see it. And talking about the fact that Gen Z has never had an experience of positive male role models, strong fathers, strong families, wives who aren't either whores or bitches, they've never seen it. It's going to go into that vacuum that has been created by the evisceration and the destruction and the retconning of Star Trek and Star Wars. It's going to live in that space, and it's going to change the planet. And the single rule of movie making, of script writing, is don't tell, show. And so I'm not going to be telling people about the things that I've been talking about tonight. All the stuff that I talked about tonight, and you've been very, very kind to, I've watched all of your comments come up, and everybody else's as well. And you're saying, get out there and get in the fight. Well, I am getting in the fight. I'm getting in the fight in a way that's going to make a difference. And what I'm saying is more important than how I'm saying it. And if I can say what I'm saying in a visual form that is exciting and entertaining to young people and older people, and this is the most important thing. If I can make political statements without people being aware that I'm making a political statement, then you have absolutely closed the loop on effective communication. And it was only on September 8th of 2025 that I sat down and made the conscious decision to go into this 100%, which is enormously risky. The amount of sheer nerve you need to make a leap like that is you're playing chicken with a train. You are risking everything. You're risking your finances. You're risking everything, and it's only people who are willing to take that shot, despite the consequences, knowing full well that most people don't succeed at this. That required more courage than anything I've ever had to do before. Kirk's Bamboo Bazooka says Bill Whittle, but behind the camera, not just behind the camera, behind the typewriter, behind the keyboards. So, hey John, good to see you too. So, the beautiful thing about this is, if this thing can get its feet under it, and I believe, I'm convinced it will, and starts generating revenue and so on, then we hire people, and then we have a factory. And when we've got a factory, I don't have to render every frame by myself, because we're making enough money so that we can hire young conservative artists to do the actual rendering and all this. And I just write the scripts, and then I tell them what the shot would be, and they make it. And if there's a problem, I say, re-render this. I don't have to do it all by myself. But if you get to the point where you can actually be making enough money so that we have a big enough staff, then we are juggling several projects. We're not just doing the colonies. Then we can do Truth Bombs, because I don't have to take rendering time away from the colonies to do Truth Bombs. I just have to write them, which is the least time consuming part of it. I usually can knock that out in a couple of hours. And if the system is up and running and the studio is staffed and producing quality stuff, then not only do I get to do the Truth Bombs and be more, because the Truth Bombs are firewalls and afterburners using using AI to keep it interesting, right? I make a point about something as I'm being carried through the woods by a Yeti, or I'm on the wing of an airplane talking about chemtrails. People will watch that. That's the plan, and the bigger that studio gets, and financial discipline is important. But I said to our entertainment attorney I hadn't talked to in years, 7-8 years, I said to him, Matt, I got to tell you, a lot of people go out of business because they have one success, and then they overextend, and they go from making a $4 million movie to a $100 million movie. If you make a $100 million movie, you got to make 300 million back, and if you fail, it's all over. I said, I for the life of me do not know how you would spend $10 million on AI video. I can't imagine how you would spend it if your life depended on it. So as long as those costs stay low and the technology advances every single day, the latest thing I put out, I look at stuff I put out 6, 7 months ago, and I think that's a little embarrassing. As they say in the AI video biz, this is as bad as it's going to look. When you see the new stuff, the Cdance is not available in US. It's still only Chinese. But when Cdance 2.0 comes, it's not going to be like the beginning of it. I've seen major advances in the 6, 7 months I've been doing this. So Cdance 2.0 is a superb leap. It's a major leap forward, but it's not the end of the line. And so every day that goes by, the video quality goes up, the ease of producing it goes up, the control that you have increases. It gets better and better and better, and it's getting better at an astonishing speed because billions of dollars out there competing with each other. There's a new engine that comes out every week, and this is no joke. My biggest problem right now is keeping track of all the different rendering engines and trying to decide which one is best for what. But all this to say, I am not dropping out of the fight. I am in the building phase now to be able to use the power of entertainment as opposed to the power of lecturing. I get to show people instead of tell them. And the last thing I'll add to this whole argument is this, and this is the single most important thing. When you go to a movie, let's say you go to an afternoon film on a Saturday afternoon, you go down to Regal Cinemas at the mall, and you watch Nosferatu. And you're in Nosferatu, you're watching this movie, and you're no longer in Sherman Oaks on a sunny afternoon. You are in a castle in Romania, and you are really nervous and scared out of your wits. What that means is your rational abilities have been intentionally put aside. We call this the willing suspension of disbelief. And when that guy comes out of the shadows or whatever, it scares the hell out of you, which means that what's going on the screen is going directly to your subconscious without going through your rational mind, and that means you are programming people. You're hypnotizing them. You can say that's nefarious. It's nefarious if it's done for evil, but you were hypnotized by Superman, you were hypnotized by Star Wars, you were hypnotized by Star Trek, and all the rest of it. So that power is so enormous. I used to talk about this all the time, not so much lately because I'm doing it now. But if I were to say to you, look, up in the sky, it's a bird, you would be able to finish the sentence because you're hypnotized. So that's how that works. And that's what we're doing. And I would like to address this as well. Chase Smith, 4121 says, Bill, please stop chasing perfection and produce a good episode. Let the characters and writing carrying the film. That is you, and it can handle the weight. Just please put out a product. I need to explain this because this is superb advice, and I'm taking it. The stuff that I have put out and sent out, and the latest stuff you haven't seen yet, doesn't look like AI video. My entire purpose on the technical end is to make sure that nobody can tell it's AI video. Your point about not letting that stop you from putting out product is a great one. But what I've been doing for the last several months now is doing the foundational groundwork that is necessary in order to do that. So let me show you an example of what I mean here. Give me 1 second. So I did a bunch of tests of Jake out on the surface of the planet with an emergency rebreather. So, in order to get this guy consistent, I have to do this. This is going to be a big image, so I'm going to have to rescale the hell out of this. And there's no way around it. This image, hang on, I'm putting it in Twitch first, and then I'll get it into YouTube. Yeah, okay, yeah, it's going to take a lot of rescaling. Hang on a second. A lot. This is a 4K image. In fact, this may take so much rescaling, it may not even be worth the effort. It'd be faster if I do this way. Hang on a second. Here, look at this while I do a quick little change here. Okay, hang on a second, YouTube. Let me just do this real fast. Hang on. Almost there. So this image is actually a 10K image, but I'll show you the version that'll show. Skip my chat if you're. Skip my chat. I'll stop if you're done with YouTube. No, I'm not done with YouTube, so hang on a second. I just want to get this up here so you guys can see what I've been doing, because it's an important question that I answer. Get rid of this. And let me get... Sorry, 1 second. It should be right there. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so this is a 1080 version of a 10K image. Here it comes, YouTube. Sorry for the delay. So. In order to get this character to look photorealistic, each one of these squares is a 4K image, which means you can really zoom in to the pores, okay? And generating these things takes a lot of time. You've got to. It may not seem like much, but it took a number of generations to get the hoodie within the hoodie. Took a number of generations to get that respirator seated right so that he's actually biting on it like it's a scuba regulator. And all of this background work has to happen, because if you start with Jake in the distance and you get closer and closer, there's not enough information in the wide shot of Jake, so that by the time it gets closer, his face just completely morphs and he looks like the Fly. Conversely, if you start with him close and you zoom back, it has to invent the clothes that he's wearing. So I have full-length body shots of him in this outfit. I've got close-up images of his face in this outfit, and so on. And all of this technical work has to be done so that when I feed it to the AI animation engine, and I can say he's walking on a glacier and the camera zooms right into a big close-up on his eyes, it will be perfect. It won't look like AI slop. And I cannot do the vertical slice movie. I can't do Cast 27 until I have these levels of reference images for all the characters, which means Will, Claire, Jake, Lisa, Cooper, who's an administrator. There's a guy named Hayden who's a rover driver. I got to do the robot. This work doesn't show up yet, and it may look like I'm chasing perfectionism, but believe me, I'm not chasing perfectionism. I'm chasing believability. Perfectionism is unachievable. Believability is achievable. And all of this work only has to be done once. I don't have to. I've got a reference panels of Jake without the mask and the respirators. But once I got Jake's face in 4K, 4 panels of Jake's face, I don't have to do it again. By the way, I could take this image here and I could simply give one command and tell Nano Banana change the outer hoodie to plaid, and it would do it. So all of this stuff is foundational work that is necessary if you're going to do the level of quality that I want. I don't want perfection, I want believability. And that's what we've been working on. And we will continue to work on until it's done, which will not be much longer. But you've seen the shots of the rover. The physics that the AI can do is absolutely amazing. By the way, I should have pulled in the face of him without the here. Take a look at this. Perfect. So here's Jake and the rover. And I think that looks pretty good. And the reason it looks pretty good, in my opinion, is because I went to the trouble to do a reference image. Now we're getting to the real point here. Okay? You don't see faces like this on television or in movies anymore. This is a strong masculine face, and just the appearance of the face alone, without anything else, just having this guy driving across this alien frozen planet with his son, this kind of dad has not been seen since the 50s. I don't have to talk about what constitutes a strong man or a virtuous man, or good men. Strong men make good times. I don't have to talk about any of that. All I have to do is show this face. I know there's just one more image I need to show, because I love it. Where would it be? Sorry to keep you waiting. It would be maybe. Hang on. Worth it. I don't know. It's going to take too long to find. I've got a picture of Jake and Lisa inside. Might be in the rovers. Hang on a second. Inside the rover. And there's one or two images that look like generated thousands of images. And I'm not going to waste a lot more time on this. If it didn't come up right now, I'm going to just bail. All right. Anyway, they look like they're sitting there in their living room, and they're embracing each other, and his wife is not a bitch or an idiot. Uh, she just loves him, and he loves her and protects her, and so on and so on and so on and so on. So all this to say is that there has not been science fiction or otherwise that I'm aware of. I was thinking about this today, as a matter of fact. I was trying to think about the last time I can remember seeing a strong father figure on television, and I didn't watch a lot of it, but the latest version that I could think of was John Goodman in Roseanne. That's the last time I can think of seeing anybody who looked like they were uh, useful, and obviously a lower class guy, but when John Goodman gets up to protect his daughter against, it's like, this is what people need. They don't have it. They don't have any examples of it, and I'm going to just flood the zone with this stuff. So I think a Tim Allen on Home Improvement. Okay, there you go. Um, and so this is what people are hungry for and dying for. And if you could put it in a envelope that is visually cool, where you've got, yes, I didn't mean to say lower class. Thank you for correcting me on that, Grelber. Working class, not lower class. That's a horrible term, and I didn't mean to use it. Um, uh, then you can actually reach millions of people and reach them in a way they don't know they're being reached. So all of this to say, I don't consider that I am finished and out of the fight. On the contrary, I feel like this technology and the support that we've gotten from people, and you know who you are, financial support, allows me to use the most powerful tools in existence to do the most good possible, and that's basically it. Okay, let me see what we got here. We got Capital G Geek, we got Braden Higby, and I think Marusha. I'm not going to do doubles today. Sorry, I'm just not. So bring it back next time. Capital G Geek. Greetings from the swamps of Northern Virginia. Did you watch the State of the Union? If not, it's worth it. Trump had two medals of honor presented. I was less thrilled with his prices are down part. It may be technically true for some areas, but it doesn't feel like that. Living in the People's Democratic Republic of California, have you seen improvements, not politically or nationally, but as if you were a normie, brain-dead local? I would like to see more price reductions. I think this is really important. It's better, sorry, but Carlton says the dad on Wonder Years was a normal guy. How long ago was that? I mean, genuinely, how long ago was the Wonder Years? 30 years? So almost two generations. So I would like to see, lower prices. I'm deeply concerned about the midterms. If the Republicans were running unopposed, we would lose. But I don't know. I haven't seen any noticeable price reductions. I don't do a lot of fast food, but when I do, I am shocked. If I go to McDonald's and get like a small fries, a Sprite, and a chocolate milkshake, that'll be $17.15 or whatever. It's like, you've got to be kidding me. But I didn't see the speech. I did see clips from it, and I think we've probably talked about most of this by now. Hopefully, the man is a master at the kind of communication that you need today, and he's from all accounts he really smoked him. So we'll see. Somebody mentioned in the chat earlier that the Republicans got a noticeable bump after the State of the Union. So we'll see. So Braden Higby, howdy from Idaho. Do you think the politics of Earth in the future are our future? I'm proposing that the future is essentially mercantilism, the union of big business and big government where each one is scratching the other's back, protecting the others. Life is not a dystopia in the future. It's just plain, it's the future that they want for us on Earth. It's the nobody owns anything and everybody will be happy. There's a small group of aristocratic elites, and they are one of the small little wrinkles, which I like a lot, in um, as far as the Earth government goes. I don't think I've ever heard this before, but there's going to be hereditary bureaucracy. So if you are the, you know, uh, the water management director for, you know, the Eastern Seaboard, that title was passed down to you from your father and your and your grandfather or grandmother, whatever the case may be. And so this they one thing that we make crystal clear: the first time you see Jake, he goes into a store to buy roses for his wife's birthday. He doesn't have the social credit score to purchase them, and he has to go to a voting booth in the corner, and he has to vote for people that are doing a crummy job in order to get the social credit score he needs to buy these roses for his wife. And the cynicism of it all is very, very much like the cynicism that existed in the late days of the Soviet Union. Everybody knows that they're lying. Everybody knows that they're being lied to. We pretend to work, and they pretend to pay us. And it's soul destroying for people with a moral code, and for people who don't have a moral code, it's actually pretty comfortable. The tropes that I'm going to stay away from are Earth is is dystopia with, you know, not in the West anyway. The Earth is dying trope is so pervasive that I'm going to make the Earth absolutely beautiful, because the Earth has recovered from the Industrial Revolution astonishingly. When I was a kid, the Great Lakes were toxic poisons. The river in Cleveland caught fire. Puffs of blue smoke came out of the tailpipes of every car. You couldn't see 4 blocks in LA for the air pollution. Mercury was in everything. The oceans were covered in oil slicks, and now the blue whale was on the verge of extinction. The bald eagle was on the verge of extinction. All of that, and it's all recovered. So the one and the other trope I'm going to fight is the global warming, and that's a problem for me, because Jake lives in Los Angeles on Earth in the pilot episode only, California Condor exactly. Jake lives on in Los Angeles in an arcology, and downtown Los Angeles is just utterly ruined, and he has to go and pick up a part at the now deserted Bakersfield arcology. And so, if you've ever been to Southern California, especially places like Bakersfield, you know it's very hot and dusty and deserty out there. And I'm going to have him go out there, but I'm going to have him go out there in a parka, because Los Angeles is very bright and very sunny and very, very cold because of the global cooling that happened right in the middle of the 21st century. So screw you guys. So I'm not giving them anything. I'm not giving them a dead Earth. I'm not giving them the rich live up here and the poor live down here. I'm not giving them any of their tropes. None of them. And that's, I think it's really important. God of Coach says, Bill, did you say billionaire Vince McMahon at 80? Is he 80? Still racing, doing 110 miles per hour and crashing a few days ago. Cops, of course, gave him red carpet treatment and gave him hugs and a handshake. I saw him. I thought, man, the guy looks really old. I had no idea he was that old. I would have said he was maybe in his 60s. So, there you go. Okay. Anyway, yeah. So I guess that's it. So I wanted to do kind of a brief show, but we did 3.5 hours. Ay caramba. This boy's still got a lot of work to do. Yeah, just over 3 hours, so that's all right. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. Talked about a lot of fun things and some great questions and some great comments and stuff. And so we'll see. I don't know how much new stuff I'll have by Monday, but should have some. And the work continues as fast as I possibly can get to it. We will soon reach the point. In fact, we may reach the point where I can start taking on some of the people to get some of this mechanical stuff off my back. But anyway, I'm planning on being more effective, not less. So thanks everybody for being here. The show's made possible by the members of BillWhittle.com who have kept this thing going low these many years and who have provided tremendous support of all kinds to me and the message and everything else. And we're very, very grateful for that as always. So we will see you Monday night on your Stratosphere Studio. Until then, keep your powder dry and don't let the bastards get you down. Hang on there, YouTube. I gotta find this thing. Come on, whatever. There it is. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Good night.